My name is Heather Johnston and I'm a member of St Mark's Church, just regular rank and file, and I stay away from church politics. I'm also the director of a small charity called Beulah, which its main projects are environmental land care ones and Indigenous reconciliation. I'm also a professed member of the Order of Aidan and Hilda, which is a Celtic Christian dispersed religious order. I think that reconciliation will have occurred when Aboriginal and non-Indigenous people have an equal conversation on an equal basis, and their histories and their cultures are equally respected, the sort of level. And I do think that in order for that to happen, Australia's history, the history of the dispossession of the settlement, needs to be acknowledged in much more than it has been. We organise many events which are aimed at public education, really, all sorts of things, storytelling, letters in the paper, marches, and we have, say 12 years ago, there were no acknowledgements on Buderim, in Anzac Day, Australia Day, or any of those things, and how they happen. That's partly because we've advocated for that and keep saying it. And we had a sorry service for the whole community, and those things help, It's a small thing, but I do think there's been a very substantial change in public opinion at that time, and we just have to be part of that process, doing our thing just here. I'm really a revegetator and a land care person, and then I concluded that you couldn't really care for your land without attending to the history, which is embedded in it in some way. And we did a re-veg project here on St Mark's property, and we got the Beulah, the charity, got the grants and organised the working bees and the events and all that sort of thing, and did it. And now it's a nice piece of mature re-veg, and it's been called One Year Park for the Indigenous people. One year is G'day in the local language, and we've got some artworks and things there. So that's been a happy collaboration, and that is sort of, it's in the infrastructure. Remembering the frontier wars is seems to me very important, although it's an important part of my agenda, is publicising and telling people about that. And we've made an installation around it at the charity, which is a series of Aboriginal artworks. Beside, there's an Aboriginal War Memorial which remembers the overseas wars, which the Aboriginal people all fought in, of course, and coming this way, it's remembering the frontier wars. And we opened the Frontier Wars installation on that occasion. So we had a service here, and we all trooped around there for afternoon tea and an official opening blessing of the installation. Dundalli was a local Aboriginal leader and a warrior and a lawman, and he was hung publicly in Post Office Square in Brisbane in 1855 on the 5th of January. And remembering those guys are heroes, the leaders, those Aboriginal leaders should be recognised and remembered. Hope that, or do intend that we should have that Dundalli event every year, with different speakers just telling the local stories. Hope next year we might have a monument, a statue of Dundalli to put up. Here, just behind here it used to be what was called the Blacks Camp, which was a very large settlement of Aboriginal and Islander people who were here until maybe the 60s or something like that. And whereas in some places Aboriginal people didn't get to go to the local schools, here they did. There were Quakers very early at Buderim who were quite enlightened in ways. Like they were people of their time, but they treated Kanakas well, for example, and so the Aboriginal and Islander people came to the school. But they were just there, and you can see there's a Kanaka wall, which is you can see from our grounds, just over the other way. But I don't think there was probably any, as far as I can find, any interaction between St Mark's and the Blacks camp, although we were actually immediate, literal neighbours, and just because it was of the times, and you know, there were people, the government didn't there were many Kanakas here brought for farming, and the government didn't approve of them marrying Aboriginal people because they were supposed to be dying out. And when they found out there'd been a whole lot of marriages, they sent people to take the children away. So on their way home from school, children were taken from just here, from the main street of Buderim, never came back in spite of many protests. And that sort of history needs to be told here. We need to tell it together and remember it and somehow process it and acknowledge it. Because it's only when you do that that it can be healed at some level. You can make a way forward. But until that has been acknowledged, I don't think reconciliation can easily happen, do you know? Well, it seems to me that's what needs to happen. Well, the Anglican Church is having repentance this year because of the Royal Commission and other things. And it's a sort of bit of a theme, isn't it? And there's a river of tears and blood between the Aboriginal culture and the non-Indigenous culture. And we're making an installation which will be installed towards the end of the year, just in Wanya Park, the last little bit of Wanya Park. And yeah, I can show you. This is a preliminary drawing, really, or just a. This is the river of tears, and this is the Aboriginal. It's really Mount Beulah, which you can see from the glass up there, and it's very strange, but the Glasshouse Mountains creation legend has Beulah weeping, and looking the other way from Buderim there's Ninderi and Coolum, Old Island, and that creation story also has a woman weeping, which is Marucci, and so it's we've named this the River of Tears, and just as we were starting to do it, somebody found an article in a 1926 Courier Mail saying that the Buderim waterfalls were women weeping. It's similar. So it's a theme, it's an appropriate theme to Buderim, and the River of Tears, and it's tears for the dispossessed, really, and the women and the children and the Kanakas and the Aboriginal people and the environment. So that's a that's what we're working on at the moment. That's just a suggestion. Oh, it's not a suggestion, it's happening, but this was the part of the proposal. I think that it's consciousness raising, and the fact that it happened in St Mark's makes it respectable or acceptable, and the wider community gets to hear the stories, you know, and the fact that we're separate from the parish and don't have to get permission for everything we do, like some things wouldn't be okay at St Mark's, so you just do them in your own way somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? It's a very happy, and things that wouldn't have been acceptable in St Mark's, say 5 years ago, now are. So, and that's progress. And things that restarted events we had, because Australia Day is very fraught, of course, and we started a celebration of country around our venue some years ago, a few days separate, where we just celebrated Aboriginal culture. with the Indigenous community, and that now happens here at St Mark's with nothing to do with my charity. So that's really great. So things become embedded in the mainstream in time, and that's very rewarding, you know. From an Aboriginal point of view, a lot of the conflict and grief is about land, and I think that if every piece of land was stolen from the Aboriginal people, like this bit stolen from the Aboriginal people, and the Anglican Church owns a vast amount of land, really, and if every congregation on every bit of, or every person on every block of land acknowledges that this land was stolen from the Aboriginal people and makes some attempt to understand the history of the place, that would be reconciliation, you know. And where you go from there, you know, it's an open question. There would be many possible directions. However, just acknowledging it, for starters, seems to me the helpful approach. And people think they own land. It's a very weird notion that you own land. Land, in fact, owns you, you know. And somehow doing the local thing with the local place with the local land that you think you own seems to me, well, that's all I can do. That's just an approach, you know. And everybody's got a different calling, and maybe it's just mine.